Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Morning,
Good morning, sir.
morning. Students have joined.
And all students are there, sir.
We'll wait for a couple of minutes.
Okay, sir.
Is there anybody who had to present something and did not present in the past and wanted to? I mean, if anybody has anything to present, we can start with that, or else we'll go with some other classes. Just wanted to check because I think last time somebody mentioned they wanted to present something. Okay, if no presentation, we can go ahead with our class. So who all have joined? Which streams have joined and which franchises have joined? Students.
Kavita, KTC Hubli, Vaishali Ballari.
Okay.
The students have joined individuals.
Students are joining individually. Okay.
Some of them are, because today is a Sunday, many
Okay,
of them
okay.
are joined
Okay.
individually.
Okay. Fine.
I think you can start, sir, by the time
Yeah.
we'll join.
I was just thinking, I think we can get started. So today we'll have two things. One is we'll talk a little bit about generative AI because I know a lot of you folks are kind of looking at AI as a subject, and generative AI is something that is definitely upcoming in the market and very much in the market, not even upcoming. It's actually very in the market. And we should know overall in terms of what this means and what is it means for our industry. So we will have a very quick short session on generative AI where I'll be kind of showing you some videos from the industry, and then we'll have Q&A. The second topic that we will have is a continuation from last class where we had some mock and a role play. And a lot of you had questions around what is the best way to communicate with an executive, be it a client or be it any kind of senior folks, or even in general when you're making a presentation, etc. So I found a good video resource which will talk about how you should typically prepare yourself and speak with the executives, and there are some pointers which will help. And of course, there are some interesting quiz and interactive sessions as well. So these are the two topics which we'll cover today. Hopefully, this should be kind of helping all of you, right? So I will share my screen and All right. Is my screen visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sure. And I will play. Just let me know if the sound is audible or not, right?
It's taken more than 6
Audible?
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, all right. I'm playing this. Just listen to this and then we'll go through each one of the sections. Yeah, this is about generative AI.
It's taken more than 60 years for artificial intelligence to turn into an overnight sensation. Now, you can't blink without reading about generative AI and all the changes it's unleashing on digital marketing. But how do you sort through the hype, develop new workflows, and select tools that make sense for your company's goals? That's what we're covering in this course. I'll start by explaining what AI is and does. I'll show you how to harness generative AI to spark creative ideas and boost your team's productivity. Hi, I'm Martin Waxman, a digital marketing strategist and AI researcher, and I'm a human, not a machine. At least, I don't think I am one yet. Join me on a fantastic journey to demystify marketing with generative AI. For some people, the thought of artificial intelligence conjures up images of killer robots trying to take over the world like they do in the famous James Cameron movie, Terminator 2. But the AI we have today is far from that. Let's take a look at 3 different types of artificial intelligence to give you a better idea of what each one does. First, we have narrow artificial intelligence, or narrow AI. Narrow AI is when a machine is designed to do one task better than a human ever could, and it's what we have now. This includes digital assistants, algorithmic feeds on social media, and generative AI. Narrow AI needs to be trained on a lot of data in order to spot patterns and make statistical predictions. But it can't transfer its knowledge to another task. When an AI is able to transfer its know-how to something new, similar to what humans can do, that's called general artificial intelligence. General AI is what we're most familiar with from science fiction books, movies, and TV, like the operating system voiced by Scarlett Johansson in the movie Her, or R2-D2 or C-3PO from Star Wars. These days, a lot of companies like Microsoft, Google, Meta, and OpenAI are putting billions of dollars into research that will lead to general AI. But we're not there yet, and there's no consensus about when we will be. On the farthest end of the spectrum is something called superintelligence, and even its name sounds scary. Superintelligence, which is sometimes referred to as a singularity, is when the intelligence of machines eclipses the collective intelligence of humanity. No one knows when or if superintelligence will ever happen, but that's why it's important to develop guidelines and regulations that always put people first. Right now, the current focus is getting a handle on narrow AI, what it does, its limitations, and how it can help you achieve your business goals. Perhaps you're using it to supplement your creative department with an AI writing or design app. Maybe it's helping you customize your digital ads in real time, or you could be looking for trends from your analytics data to get insights on customer behavior. Just remember, narrow AI is all about statistical predictions and data, so be sure you have a plan in place to safely collect, manage, and protect your data.
All right, I'll pause for a moment. So as you heard, there are 3 different streams of AI, and probably right now the most important part of AI would be the narrow AI, and within that, what is generative AI? So which kind of and typically, I mean, I'm sure all of you would have heard about the Chat GPT, and how typically these tools and these AI functions are helping to gather or get work done faster. What are the typical use cases, writing, design, customizing ads, customer insights, and data, right? The other day, I think in one of the classes, somebody asked, what is a good way to write a cover letter? I think it was somebody from KTC Hubli. What is a good way to write a cover letter, right? While I was giving you some examples and basic guidelines in terms of how it should be simple, it should be just talking about the main highlights, etc. In your free time sometime, try using a chat GPT, right? It's a very simple open thing. You go to your browser and you kind of open chat GPT and you say you need to write a cover letter and input your skills over there. You are writing the cover letter for which kind of job functions, right? Maybe it's an AI, maybe it's a data. I think the interview questions, mock interviews that we were having was around data, right? You put in those inputs, give the system what kind of cover letter you want to generate, click on it, and you will find a cover letter right in front of you. So this is where generative AI actually is kind of taking the world into. You want to, let's say, design some sort of a PPT, like even in a lot of the presentations that we did in the class. You want to generate create a lot of PPTs, and you may not have too much of time to spend on it, but what is the topic, what is it that you would want to kind of input. So you put in that input, and you will see, based on that input and based on that case study, your PPT is kind of generated. Now, what you need to also do is, see, at the end of the day, this is machine. It may generate something for you, but you cannot copy paste and kind of come and present saying, hey, you know what, this is what I have. You still have to spend time to modify this or customize this or add certain things, which is more of a manual intervention. But imagine, instead of creating 20 slides in let's say 1 week, where everybody is working together with a generative AI, with the chat GPTs of the world, you are then able to very quickly divide and distribute your work amongst your group. Everybody comes back with a kind of a output, and then one person or few people in the group, they collate it, they make it a proper presentation, and then they kind of talk about it, right? So these are things I would encourage you should try. One, because it is latest. Two, because it will help you to get used to these kind of tools. And three, it will make your life easy. You don't have to really start from scratch for anything. You have all this information. But of course, as I said, because we are humans, we also need to kind of, once we get the final output, we need to make those edits and changes and make it more customized, right? But you should definitely try out, even not only for this class with me, I'm sure you're having a lot of classes with a lot of your other faculty members as well, and you would be having different assignments given to you. So try this out, get all the information, everything is available, and then try to see how you're able to customize it. Don't copy paste, but try to see how you're able to customize it and come back to presentations with more relevant information, etc. So would be helpful. And today we'll learn how these things could be done, and that's what they're talking about. If you see the screen here, they're talking about writing, design, customize ads, insights, data, everything is available, right? So let's look into what are the other 4 concepts. Of course they're talking about marketing here, but it could be non-marketing as well. It's quite similar, right? Then we'll talk about navigating few of the in AI tools which could be used, and these are real-time tools and which could be helpful, right? So let's look into that in the next few videos.
Before we dive into the AI tools and how you might use them for your brand, it's a good idea to understand some key AI concepts. Let's look at 4: natural language processing, or NLP, computer vision, multimodal learning, and generative AI. I'm going to start with generative AI since it's a term you've been hearing about a lot. Generative AI describes what happens when a machine is able to produce something original based on a written request. A simple way to think of it is prompt to create. You describe what you want, and the AI brings it to life. How does it do that? Well, generative AI uses natural language processing, or NLP, to, in quotations, understand the connection between words so it can predict what might come next. You see, in order to provide a human-sounding output, NLP needs to be trained on vast amounts of data. And that's where large language models, or LLMs, come in. LLMs read or process data from websites, digital books, social media posts, blogs, media outlets, Wikipedia, and many other public sources of online text. Once an NLP has been trained, it can use its knowledge to offer a good guess of what may come next in a sentence or paragraph and craft a verbal response that makes sense to you and me. In the same way that NLP lets a machine understand words, computer vision is all about the way an AI sees the world, and it does that in a very different way from people. When you see a chair, it doesn't matter if it's upholstered, made of wood, or even upside down. You know it's a chair. Machines need to be trained on many different images of chairs of all shapes and sizes in order to distinguish them, because they don't possess the reasoning abilities we have, and that can lead to AI mistakes. Until recently, NLP and computer vision operated as separate domains, but breakthroughs in multimodal learning let machines combine several data types to produce creative results. Now that paved the way for text-to-image design and will soon alter how you create videos, music, synthetic voices, 3D scenes, and a lot more. Ultimately, it all comes down to the quality of your prompt and expressing what you want in language a machine can grasp, which is why prompt engineering is a good skill for marketers to have. As I've mentioned before, artificial intelligence is all about predictions, and in many cases, they're getting really good. But AI doesn't have intuition and can't read your mind. So, to get what you want, you have to prepare detailed instructions a machine understands. That's called prompt engineering, and it's becoming a new marketing skill. Prompt engineering is the strategic use of language as the input that lets the AI know the parameters for the creative output you want to see. In many ways, it's a lot like coding, except the symbols you're using are words. While your colleagues at work might be able to fill in the blanks when you ask them to do something, generative AI can only respond to what's included in your prompt. That's why you want to make sure you're descriptive and specific by specifying details like length and format, tone, the audience you're trying to reach, and whose perspective it's from. If you want your output to have bullet points or headers, say it. The same goes for image generation. You need to paint a picture in words of the image you envision in your mind. As you can imagine, there's a lot of trial and error involved in prompt engineering, and you'll need to figure out how to become almost an AI whisperer to the machine. I encourage you to check out Dave Burse's great course on LinkedIn that teaches you how to craft an effective writing or research prompt and gives you lots of examples. Ultimately, you and your team will need to test any new generative AI tool you're using to see how it responds to your prompts. And it's a good idea to approach this in a scientific manner. Record and assess what works to determine which types of prompts give you better results. Then adapt and develop best practices of your own. As with any skill, the more time you spend prompting your AI tool, the better you'll become.
Yeah, I'll pause for a moment. And this is exactly what, I was talking about in the example. When you were wanting to create, let's say, a cover letter or a PPT or any other document for which you need an output, you should be as descriptive as possible. And here the author is talking about prompt engineering. So it means nothing. Prompt means whatever input you're giving to the system. So it goes to the extent of saying that, say, for example, in your presentation, you want it in a bullet point, or you want it in a horizontal line, or you want some relevant images and videos to be linked with it. So you should be saying all of these because, see, at the end of the day, the machine, the AI as a machine, is all about understanding what you are requesting. And over the years, through NLP and LLP, as you just heard, The machine would have been trained on various, data. They would have over the years, scraped through or being trained, or they would understand that, if a user as a human, I am prompting something, which means what could be the next, because AI has to be predictive. AI has to, you're not talking to the machine, you have to, the machine has to understand what you really intend to do. So as descriptive as possible, you are able to give the prompt, you will start seeing these results. And again, the last part of the video talks about, you will not get it accurate the first time. You have to do a trial and error, because we are also kind of learning. We are also new here. We don't know exactly what kind of prompts will give what kind of results. So we have to do some sort of a permutation combination. We have to use some various ways in which we are kind of putting in the inputs in the description. And then over the time, we'll see, okay, you know what, if this is the topic, this is the kind of results I would want to get, I should be using this prompt. And that's how we are also learning. And I'm sure in the coming years, this prompt engineering, or how do I use prompt to get the output result, itself is going to be a skill. There would be people who would probably be teaching, or there would be people who would probably be kind of, doing a full-time job of telling, how should we prompt, right? Some new areas of job creation in the market, right? So when people talk about AI taking away jobs, a certain kind of jobs, I always say that it may take away certain kind of jobs, but it will also create some additional kind of jobs, some additional kind of new jobs with new skill sets. And I think it's important in this class or in this group, as we are learning the various latest of technology, which is for the future, we should look into these futuristic concepts. We should look into thinking that if I'm able to, for example, be somebody who can prompt and who can take up a prompt engineering, that perhaps may be my better career option than maybe some other traditional work, right? So I think that's the purpose of this class and these examples, to show you and help you to think, how would you typically kind of do that, right? So let's look into some more examples. Okay, there are some quiz questions here. What type of artificial intelligence is generative AI? So, sorry, which one? First one? Second one? Okay, second one. Let's see. Submit. Yes, that's correct. Let's go to the next question. Describe how natural language processing, that is NLP processing, helps generative AI produce text. Anybody should be able to answer. I mean, either you can chat as well. You can send your answers in chat as well. So there are 4 options.
Yeah, first one.
First one. Okay, let's see. That's correct. Natural language processing is a machine's way of understanding or computing the connections with connecting the 2 words, right? So it's not a search engine, right? Let's go to the next question. Amy is a copywriter. Right? Now, this is a real role-time play. Who is trying to get an AI writing app to generate ideas for headline? You have to create headlines, right? What element should go into her prompt? Same examples which I was talking about, when you need to generate some sort of a output. Which one will be the best way to generate the right kind of an output that comes up? How should I give a prompt so that I get the best result?
The second one.
Second one. Okay, let's see. That's correct. Because the more we just talked about, the more the descriptive, more details we are giving in the prompt, the system will understand our requirement better, right? And hence you should be as descriptive as possible. All right. So I think all of you answered the 3 questions correctly. Let's move on to the next section.
You know those times when you're racing against a deadline and you've got to come up with some copy fast, but the blank screen is staring you down and you wonder how you're ever going to get it done.
So this is a typical example of, like, and I'm sure all of you would have also faced. Case studies, did not have the time to prepare, short time, too many assignments. How can you do things quickly and smartly, right? So this is a very, very similar situation of, like, what the examples are all about. Let's listen.
Well, this could be a job for generative AI. Just enter your prompt and presto, your superhero copy is ready in a flash. Well, not quite. Before you enter your prompt, you'll need to know what you want, and that starts with your objective and your content type. Are you creating ad copy, a blog post, Instagram captions, ideas for a headline? Whose perspective are you writing it from? Which platforms are you using to promote it? And what tone do you want to convey? Once you get your first output, review it closely and make sure it's accurate. Are you certain everything's grounded in truth and not simply made up? That's where your expert fact-checking skills come in. Then review it for intent. Does a copy inspire your customers to take action, or is it a bit generic and dull, or worse, offensive or overly biased? If it doesn't meet your standards, you'll need to adjust or refine your prompt. Let's see how a brand can put AI writing into action. Audrey Topsy is the founder of artisanal bakery Topsy Turvy. Their visuals are amazing, but they don't have the resources they need to write all the content they want to produce. Audrey, would you and your team ever think of using generative AI to help you with creative captions for photos and videos on Instagram?
We haven't, but I'd be open to trying it. How would I get started?
First, think of a prompt to describe a photo you're about to share. And remember, be specific and mention it's for Instagram.
Okay. Describe the rivalry between a lemon vanilla cupcake and ice sugar cookies in a lighthearted and funny way for posts that could be used on Instagram and that targets women between 18 and 34.
Great. Let's input that. Now, you wait a second. So what do you think?
That's pretty good. Now, I'm worried I'm going to be spending even more time on Instagram than I already do.
There are many AI writing generators.
Yeah, so I'll pause. So you saw, if a post had to go on an Instagram, then using the tool, how did Audrey give the prompt? She very clearly talked about, she wanted differences between two different types of cupcake, lemon and something else. That was one. Then she also mentioned, this is for a social media post on Instagram very specifically, because posts on an Instagram versus post on a LinkedIn or post on a Facebook will be different. It could be something else as well. And then once you are putting in all those input, then the tool and the system is giving you some sort of a output, right? So hence the description or what exactly you want, the more you want, the better. The more you are able to tell the system, the better, right?
You can use, and we've listed some helpful tools in the exercise files. Just be sure to test them out before you make your final selection and ask the vendor about safety and how they protect your proprietary data so your competitors can't find out your trade secrets. Don't think of AI as a copywriting replacement. It's more like an always-on assistant, one that has some good ideas, but also spews out a lot of junk. It's your job to find those diamonds in the rough and then use your talents to edit and polish them till your copy shines.
Something what I mentioned. So you get the output. Don't just copy and paste and share. You put in your effort to edit, polish, make the changes, customize, based on the questions or the case studies or anything, any assignments that is given to you, make it your own. And then share as a final output. That's very important to keep in mind.
I've always considered myself a writer first, and that's sometimes been a challenge in the digital world where visual storytelling and writing go hand in hand, which could explain why there's so much excitement about text-to-image apps, because they let you use words to describe the visuals you imagine, and in seconds, you see a finished result. Sometimes the images are really good. Other times, they're just silly or weird. And in many cases, the quality depends on, you guessed it, your prompt. That's why it's a good idea to get your designers involved in the process early, as they'll be able to help you focus your prompt and fine-tune the raw output into concepts you can use for your brand. Similar to AI writing, be sure your prompt clearly describes the pictures you see in your head. Mention the format you're looking for, and if you envision a particular color palette or artistic style. And always be prepared to tweak your prompt. Pay attention to the ones that give you the best results and the elements that they have in common. There are many tools to choose from, and they range from free to paid and include DALL-E 2, Stable Diffusion, and Midjourney. Even the design app Canva and Adobe have a generative AI feature. And Tome, a startup, integrates natural language processing and computer vision to speed up the creation of presentations and slides.
To your point, Canva is something which you can use very easily. This is a very easy, simple, popular tool. And all of us can use Canva, either on your mobile or on the desktop. I personally use it quite a lot in terms of creating some images. It's pretty automated. So whenever you have to make a presentation, or you have to think of using the right images, you can use this tool to do. And then again, as I mentioned, Tome, I haven't used really Tome, but I have heard that this is something which helps in creating some easy, quick slides and presentations and all those things, right? And then of course there are many other such tools as well. I'm sure if we go and search in Google, we'll find what are those AI generative tools that helps to create presentation. Use them. You start using them in your assignments that is given to you. So here we are talking about the same things in this video.
Let's see an example of how a brand can put AI imagery into action. Leslie Richardson is a marketing director for Landon Hotels, a boutique hotel chain that prides itself on outstanding customer service. They're planning to open a lavish but budget-friendly resort in Italy, and we're looking for inspiration for the decor.
Of course, we worked with a design agency, but before we briefed them, we wanted to see how our team visualized the idea of affordable luxury. One of our copywriters had been playing with the text-to-image generators, so we had them lead a brainstorming session where we took turns describing our vision for the resort, and then printed out all the AI outputs and put them on the wall.
What were some of the prompts that you used?
Well, one that worked well was a young couple on a romantic getaway, seated in a room on two colorful chairs with geometric designs. Between them is a small antique wooden table. Behind the table is an arrangement of flowers. We only see their backs as they're facing a window that overlooks the Mediterranean.
Well, let's see how that might look. A young couple. Paste the rest in, and then what we can do is watch while the magic happens. So, were you pleased with what you got?
Let's say it opened our eyes. Some of the images were just awful, way off the mark, but a few of them, like this one, gave us an idea we eventually shared with our designers.
Landon Hotels use text-to-image AI as inspiration, but you can create visuals for ads, blog posts, email newsletters, or even stories on social media. When it comes to text-to-image design, the sky's the limit. Actually, you can go way beyond that as long as you maintain the visual standards and guidelines of your brand. Lights, camera, AI? Video production has always been a complex and labor-intensive task because you needed a script, actors, directors, cinematographers, audio engineers, editors, musicians, and, of course, a great story. Social media and mobile tech simplified the process, and now, like so many other areas of marketing, it's being transformed by generative AI. Let's begin at the idea stage. You can prompt AI to create a script that your team can then revise, ask it to develop characters and their backstories, use a text-to-image generator to come up with some cool ideas for sets and decor. You can paste your script into a video creation app like Lumen 5, upload images, and the AI will create a motion capture video with text, your images, some stock images mixed in, and music right from the site. You can see a demo of how easy to use Lumen 5 is in my Digital Marketing Trends course. Soon, you'll be able to describe the action you want to see in a scene, and AI will generate the video for you with an AI-created avatar whose perfectly synthesized voice brings your brand to life. Prompt-based video editing will speed up process and let you quickly add effects. Generative AI will also compose the musical soundtrack for your video. Just tell it the genre, tempo, arrangement, and length, and you'll be humming the tune in no time. Of course, not all these features are available now, but they will be soon, and you can see how they'll streamline the process. But one thing won't change: the need for a memorable story that keeps your customers glued to the screen. It's hard to ignore the hype around all the new AI writing and design apps, but that's just the tip of the AI iceberg. Soon, you'll have even more tools to help optimize your marketing role. Let's check out the landscape in the not-so-distant future. For starters, your customer service chatbot will listen, nod, smile, solve problems, and respond to questions using a synthetic voice. Marketers will be able to code it using natural language prompts and no-code apps that let you imagine a conversational flow. Just remember to build in a process to seamlessly hand over an interaction to a human if the AI can't handle a request. Speaking of customer service, generative AI is being integrated into your customer relationship management platform and will help you personalize, organize, and manage your email campaigns. And it will be able to summarize your emails and craft responses and marketing messages and reduce the time you spend managing your inbox. Generative AI will let you set up and manage projects with a prompt and provide reminders and tracking to ensure your team meets your deadlines. Need to create a budget? Just tell an AI budget app your goals and parameters, and it will prepare your spreadsheet effortlessly and provide reports on where you are with your spend. Major platforms like Google and Meta already offer you AI ad optimization, but imagine how easy it will be if you just have to input your idea, audience, budget, and channels, and the AI will create and place your ad for maximum ROI. And of course, you'll have your own personal AI assistant to keep track of your day, schedule appointments, and assist you with research, relationship management, and creativity. This is just the beginning. And while it may feel a bit like science fiction, it's more like the new reality of marketing today. Let's fast forward a few years to a time when immersive technologies like augmented and mixed reality and the metaverse are in full swing. What part will generative AI play? Well, you can bet artificial intelligence will feature prominently in many immersive apps to ensure the digital assets appear where and when they're supposed to, and generative AI could become the superhero tool that lets you dream, create, iterate, and bring visual scenes to life right before your eyes. For instance, what if you wanted to take your customers to a pristine beach or a breathtaking view of the desert? Well, generative AI tools will let you describe your vision and create it instantly. And you'll be able to fix or refine it by changing your prompt and insert your brand into the surroundings in a subtle and surprising way. Take a look at this image and see if you can spot H+ sport. Suppose you're the marketing lead for a museum or a tourist board. Maybe you want to make it easier for people who visit your attraction to find out more info when they're standing in front of a painting or a historical site. Just prompt the AI to create a short description of the site, a bit of extra context, and an image to go along with it, and geolocate that to the object or place. Then, if a person wants to find out more, they could put on their AR glasses and the information would pop up in front of them in the language of their choice. How about a brand like Two Trees Olive Oil? They've grown well beyond their family business roots and have olive groves all over the world. Say they want to celebrate their growers who produce the finest EVOO, but timing and logistics make that impossible to happen in real life. Instead, they can create a metaverse space to connect the groves virtually, which lets their customers wander from one to the other, talk to the growers, and even place orders, all in real time. Generative AI will help you build memorable 3D experiences in the metaverse, in AR, and in mixed reality.
All right, and we have some quiz time. So the first question. So Jal is the marketing director of a large food services company. What advice should Jal give to an assistant tasked with reviewing a piece of AI generated content? So what would be the answer? Anyone? Anyone from the classes? Somebody is mentioning something in chat. Okay, Chandrakant from Hubli says 4th. All right, which means if you don't want to get if you don't get what you want, copy and paste the same exact prompt, try again. Okay, let's see. Incorrect. So read the question properly. Jal is the marketing director. What advice should Jal give to an assistant? So there's another in the chat. 3rd. Be sure to proofread closely and ensure that everything is factually correct. Okay, let's see. That's correct. So yeah, so always remember, like, you have to be proofreading and you have to ensure that everything is factually correct. Only then the system is going to give you the right kind of an input, right? Name 3 tools you could use for text to image generation. I think this is pretty simple.
Sir, third one.
Third one. That's right, correct. And you can use Adobe and Canva pretty easily. I haven't used DALL-E 2, but then I hear that is very popular. How will AI change the way you produce video?
Sir, first one.
First one, okay. Any other answers? All right, let's see. Wrong. So it is all of the above, right? Because everything that you see here, it will help you. It will help you to describe the scenes. It will allow you to give a verbal prompt. It will also help you to synthesize human voices and characters. Everything together becomes a video. Right? All right. I think there are a couple of people who got the answers. Chandrakant and Pooja Patil, they got the answers correctly. Next question. What is true about generative AI with relation to managing customer relationships? What would be the most accurate one here? This is a tricky one, but think of it in a customer relationship
Second one.
management. Second one, okay. Chandrakant also says second one. All right, let's see. That's correct. Great. Who else has given the answer? Pooja. All right, second. Okay, yes, second is the answer. All right. So let's now move on to the last section of this, which talks about, like, how would you typically develop your strategy? And it is very important to keep in mind what kind of issues and risks and policies you would develop, because otherwise it can become troublesome. For anything to do with AI and these kind of new technologies, it's very important to have a regulation and a control, right? So let's listen to them, and then we'll have a final quiz, right?
Generative AI, like any technology, comes with benefits and risks, and you need to assess and manage the good and the bad before adding AI to your marketing mix. Let's start with the data used to train the algorithm. If it spouts racist or toxic content, what are the implications for your brand? What about the proprietary company data you enter? What guarantees do you have that it won't be used to train the machine and that it won't end up in your competitors' hands? Bias is another concern, and it comes in many forms. It could be the bias in data that hasn't been trained on a diverse set of examples and adversely affects a person's life. Or it could be the bias built into the algorithm itself. You'll want to figure out how to reduce and mitigate biases, or you could risk making the wrong decision and harming your customers or your brand. Some other issues to consider are privacy, including protecting your data as well as the data your customers and staff share with you. Then there's transparency and the way you'll disclose how you're using AI. Explainability is another thing to consider, or communicating why a machine made the decision it did if a customer is unhappy with the outcome or just wants to know. Then there's the issue of copyright and ownership, especially if your creative work resembles an artist or a designer. And because generative AI tends to make things up, you'll want to set up guardrails to ensure your content is factual and you don't spread misinformation or lies. That's why it's essential to develop enterprise-wide policies to frame the ways you'll be using AI. Bring your company's legal, data science, IT, finance, operations, marketing, and communications teams together to establish those guidelines. And prepare a crisis response strategy that puts people ahead of machines. The National Institute of Science and Technology, or NIST, has a 4-step reputation management framework you can use to get started. That is, map, measure, manage, and govern. You'll also want to think about the wider consequences AI might have for your company and society at large, and how you can use it in an ethical and responsible manner. Figure out where you'll draw the line and what checks and balances you'll need. And in every situation, make sure a human has the final say. In the early days of social media, some marketers dove in headfirst. Others took a more cautious approach, and still others buried their heads in the sand. Meanwhile, brands weren't sure what to do. I think we're in a similar place with generative AI. Which is why now's a good time to figure out how AI fits into your marketing workflow. You can start by mapping out the use cases, determine who's going to manage the output and how the AI might improve productivity. Are you going to use it as an idea generator, first draft writer, headline or keyword specialist? Maybe you're going to use it for rewriting or editing suggestions, research reports, meeting summaries, or to take a visual concept and bring it to life. Your needs depend on your team size and the type of content you produce, and you'll want to take all of that into account. Next, get a handle on how AI might alter people's roles. Will you have fewer junior writers, but more fact checkers? What skills would a fact checker need? And is someone from your team up to the task? What about prompt engineering? Again, is that a new hire or a job for an existing member of your staff? And most important, who will be responsible for the AI content that's released if anything goes wrong? Then, once you have an outline of your process, brief your team and try it out for a couple of weeks to gather internal feedback. What's working? Where do you need to go back to the drawing board? Were there any uses that you never even thought of? The point is, you want to be flexible and optimize your team's creative output. And when you do implement the new workflow, there's bound to be a learning curve. So build in time to let people adjust. And don't forget to consider how AI systems could affect your company culture and current team. You'll also want to establish a protocol to identify and evaluate the AI tools you may want to use. Start by defining the criteria you're looking for so you can assess features and price. Do you want an enterprise version anyone can use or one or two subscriptions? Does the AI tool fit into your existing tech stack? And how will a vendor safeguard your data? Put all of that into a spreadsheet so you can compare one vendor with another, and be sure to prioritize what's most important, and always ask to test drive the app so your team can let you know if it's right for their needs. When it comes to generative AI workflow and tools, there's no one size fits all. So be open and listen to your team. There are so many new products being launched that the choices you make today will likely change in the future. And you may need to go back to the drawing board and adapt.
Okay, quiz time. Describe the steps in the National Institute of Science and Technology's AI Reputation Management Framework. What is it, what are the sequential steps one should follow? Right, I see a chat here. Somebody says 1. Right, let's look at 1. Correct. So you should map, measure, manage, and govern. And that's where, you need to bring in everybody together so that everybody has their inputs in how you determine the structure. That's what it talks about, right? All the functional teams. Now, Carlos is designing a process to integrate AI into the workflow for his marketing team. Where should he begin? Again, keeping the similar steps in mind. How should he start thinking? Right, I see a result. Chandrakant says 2. I don't think 2 is right, but let's see. Yep, it's incorrect. So read the question. Somebody is trying to design a process to integrate in AI into the workflow for his marketing team. Where should he begin? 3. Right. So he's correct. You should map the existing workflow and determine where it fits before you move on to the next steps. Right. Okay, so I think we are done with this one, and conclusion is there, and let's listen to the conclusion.
Well, the algorithm course is almost over, and now you've got a better sense of generative AI and how it's reshaping digital marketing. I outlined 3 types of AI and what each does, and identified several key concepts to help you get a handle on what's under the AI hood. I gave you tips on how to talk to machines by being direct and specific because, let's face it, AI is not like us. And I described some of the tools and applications currently available and what to expect in the not-so-distant future. I also discussed ethical risks and challenges, and I shared strategies on how to reimagine your workflow in a way that brings out the best in your team. I know AI can feel overwhelming, so stay curious, critical, and open to change. If you have any questions about generative AI in marketing, please follow me on LinkedIn or subscribe to my Digital Marketing Trends newsletter. Thank you for watching the course. And remember, AI might be your helper, but when it comes to creativity, that's where you shine.
Yes, as we talked about earlier, so you may use a lot of AI tools to make your life easy, but then ultimately it's not a copy paste exercise. It's also about getting the input, reviewing it, you being creative, ensuring that the machine or the systems is actually giving you the right kind of a output. That's important as well, right? So any questions on this course? Before we move on to the next one for today, anybody has any questions, thoughts, any comments around this? Anything at all? Okay, the next course is going to be more about communications and how you should think of communicating with the executives, how you should think of it, how does an effective communication starts, right? Opening the meeting, or a presentation for that matter, how would you typically do that? What are the few things to keep in mind when you're communicating? This should help you to get a overall idea of what are the few things you can do in communicating wherever, be it in the class, be it presenting something, or be it in a meeting, or even if you're in an event, or if you're meeting with a lot of people. It could be anything, right? It is anything and everything to do with communication. So I think that would be a good starter. And then what I would really encourage you is whatever you're learning, you start to apply that in your day-to-day presentations and your courses or the assignments and etc. that you are doing, which will help you to then do this application as to whatever you are learning. And in the future classes, you are able to come back and say, this is the way in which we may want to do, right? That's the idea of this. But let's share the screen. Let's look into what we have for the communication class. All right. Okay, let me start playing.
Communicating with executives can play a big role in your career. Whether it's with a customer or a member of your leadership team, these moments are important, but they also can come with a lot of anxiety. I'm Dan Shapiro, Chief Operating Officer at LinkedIn, and in 2015, I hosted a small gathering of leaders from across the company to share my best practices that I learned over the course of my career. And someone videotaped it. It went viral across the organization. And what I learned from that experience is that these tactics are rarely taught. Now, the beginning of it is that if you want to effectively communicate with an executive, you need to learn to think like an executive. You need to be able to understand what's going on in their minds. What questions are they asking? Because if you can do that, then you can create an environment where you present the information that's going to help them be successful so that you can be successful.
Very important point. If you remember, during the mock interview classes that we had, I did mention that one of the ways to prepare for an interview or any kind of presentation is thinking of who is opposite you. Who are you talking to? Who are you presenting to? Who are you interviewing for? If you are able to understand what are the possible questions that person may actually ask you, then your job becomes easy. Then we already know you are predicting what kind of questions may actually come. And that's your preparation part of it, be it a presentation or be it an interview. And that's a very, very, very critical aspect of preparing. Otherwise, if you do not prepare, you would always walk in and then you will say something, you will show some slides, you will talk about some points, you will answer some questions. There is always going to be follow-up question and question and question, which will take the entire thing to a different, track altogether. So preparing and understanding and ability to think what the other person may think is very, very important. And this will only come when you start thinking. When you start thinking, okay, if I am given this topic, or if I'm asked this, I'm preparing for this interview, this is the role, what could be the possible ways in which, the interviewer or the person who is evaluating the presenter is able to kind of think what is going on his or her mind. To some extent, it might not be 100%, but to some extent. And then you know that you're already covered with a lot of those preparations where you are ready. That's the first stage of communication, trying to understand, what's possible, what kind of questions you may actually anticipate to get, right? So that's what, this one also kind of talks about. Let's listen to more.
So if we want to think like an executive, the starting place is to put ourselves in their shoes, to imagine the day that they're going through. And if it's anything like mine, it's meetings back to back through most of the day. I'm meeting with customers, with partners, with members of the team. We could be talking about a wide range of topics, things that I know really well and things that I have much more peripheral awareness of. So understanding that an executive throughout their day is going through massive context switching is really important, because it means that the opening of the conversation is essential to get right. If you can help them context switch into the meeting that you're having with them with the right starting points of information, it's going to set them up for success. It's going to mean that you can have a more successful meeting, and ultimately that you're going to be positioning them to be as productive as possible. So we're going to spend a moment talking about some really simple tactics of nailing the opening. Okay, so the meeting's about to start, the executive sits down, and you have a prime moment to frame the conversation to help set them up for success and you up for success. Now, we've probably all been in this meeting. About halfway through, you're wondering why you're having the meeting, you're not really sure what you're trying to accomplish by all coming together. One of the most effective things that you can do at the outset of the meeting is to be very clear about the objective. At LinkedIn, we actually have this practice where we sometimes say, and it doesn't need to be this formal, but sometimes we say, this meeting will be successful if. We even write it on the slides sometimes. This meeting will be successful if. It'll be successful if we get feedback on our initiative. It'll be successful if we get approval on an ask that we're making. We'd be successful if we review our learnings from this project and agree on goals for the next 6 months. If everyone knows what you're here to accomplish, then as an executive, I can then focus on the task at hand. And remember, just like you, they're trying to be successful too. Now, the other thing, and this ties back to the context switching that we discussed earlier, is that although this might be the project that you're discussing, that you wake up in the morning thinking about, that you work on all day, and it's the last thing in your mind before you go to bed, this may be something that this executive has very little information about. And it may even be the situation where they're nervous about the fact that you expect them to know a lot about a topic that they really don't. So it's helpful to bridge from something you know that they are focused on into the thing that you're going to discuss. Here's an example. This meeting will be successful if we can agree on our goals for the next 6 months on our initiative to help customers improve their experience with LinkedIn. Now, one of the things that we've been focusing on is helping customers solve their challenges on their own, which ties to our broader corporate objective of being easy to do business with as an organization. It's a very simple example of how you can help everyone understand what you're talking about, why you're all here, and tying it back to something that executive is probably quite familiar with.
I'll pause here. So how do you take this example for the fact if you have to present something? Beginning of the presentation, you can set the context. You can set the context in a very simple way that this presentation is going to talk about X, Y, Z. And at the end of the presentation, we will understand A, B, C, whatever that challenge is, or whatever that you're trying to solve in the presentation, right? That's one way of kind of, presenting. Of course, he takes the examples of like, a meeting room, and a meeting, like, how typically meetings are run, etc. But then you can apply it everywhere, even for a like, any group discussion or any kind of meeting you're getting into, or any kind of presentations you're making, or even, for example, preparing for the interview. You're thinking, okay, fine, you know what, if this is the role, then I should be definitely talking about these 4 points, because that's what, like, is relevant, and let me kind of, keep that in mind. So I set the context. A lot of times in interviews, questions are asked, give me an example of, tell me an example of, tell me how do you do it, give me a real-time case scenario, right? That is where, when you're answering these questions, you should be saying, okay, let me help you get the let me answer your question, and at the end of the question, like, I will try to explain ABC, giving a very, very clear, like, very, very clear direction in terms of what you would want to talk, and what would you would want to explain, really helps the other person sitting across to understand the clarity of your thought. So that is the key takeaway from here, right? So let's listen more.
Okay, so there are many kinds of meetings that you might have with executives, but there are two in particular that we're going to focus on, and you may have experienced these. The first is providing an update on an initiative to talk about how it's going. And the second is to propose an idea to get support for it. And so we're going to break each of these down and learn some frameworks to how you can be successful in these conversations. Now, let's get back into the executive shoes. We're jumping between meetings. We're about to get an update on an initiative that perhaps we don't have a lot of information about, and perhaps we don't even know how it fits into the broader strategy. So you can ask yourself, what questions do you need to answer very early in the meeting to make sure that the executive can then participate well? And as an executive, there are two questions that I ask myself constantly. What's it worth? How big is it? Does it change the trajectory of the company? So that's the first question. And how's it going? If I think it's going to be a big deal, do I trust the team? Do I feel like we're on track? Is there something that I personally need to do to make sure that we're on this journey successfully? Now, you can almost imagine that there's a 2x2. On the x-axis, you have how's it going? And on the y-axis, you have what's it worth? What's the value that you're going to create? Now, you might think that the thing that you want to do is to make the executive feel like this is really valuable and going incredibly well. But that's often the difference between what's going to help make you successful and actually help them be successful. Because if they need to make a decision, being able to precisely and exactly pinpoint where this is on that chart is going to help them make great decisions. So you might think that answering the questions, what's it worth and how it's going, could take 10 or 15 minutes, but actually you can do it in 60 seconds if you can just focus on answering a couple key questions. Let me give you an example. Welcome, everyone. As you all know, helping our small business customers work with us is one of our core corporate priorities for this year. It's one of our biggest growth opportunities. And so the objective of this meeting is to review the progress we've made in helping small businesses work with us over the last 6 months and agree on some goals that we're setting and the initiatives that we're going to support over the next year. Now, over the past 6 months, we are on track. We have grown the number of situations where customers can help themselves from 10% to 25%, in particular by using artificial intelligence to guide them to situations where they can actually resolve their own issues. That saved customers over 1 million hours and impacted over $500 million of revenue. We believe that over the next 12 months, we can extend that to 40%, in particular by moving beyond English and helping support our customers all over the world. Okay, so let's break down that example. I connected the purpose of the conversation to a corporate objective that my executive would be aware of. I helped set a clear objective for this meeting. We were going to review progress from the last 6 months and agree on our plan for the next 12 months. I clearly articulated that the project is on track and that we're hitting certain milestones. And they also gave a sense for the overall scale of impact that we had received from this initiative by saving customer time and helping drive revenue. So we were able to package all of these things into the first 60 seconds of the conversation. Now, clearly I didn't go into any of them at depth, but that can come later in the conversation. Once everyone has this context, everyone's able to contribute successfully.
So very important to set the right context. At the very beginning of the meeting or at the very beginning of the presentation, setting the right context, providing the objectives, talking about what are we going to talk about today, etc., becomes important. And that's the key, right? So let's look at the next section, which talks about the right mindset. How are you even approaching this whole situation? Because you have to be having a very right, mindset in order to even start preparing or setting the objectives or preparing for the meeting, etc., right? Let's listen to how the right mindset.
So I do want to take a moment to underscore something that's a bit of a watch out, something that can go wrong in these conversations. Because one of the things that you want the executive to perceive about you is that you understand the material and that you have good judgment. So it goes back to this framework, this mindset of your goal in an initiative update is to provide as accurate and precise a view of what's going on, as opposed to trying to make it look good. Now, that can happen in a couple of directions. It can first happen in terms of the value of the initiative. I've had people use the word massive impact, monumental upside, phenomenal growth. And then when I ask for a number, when I hear it, it feels very small. And what that reinforces to me is that this person doesn't understand what massive or monumental or transformative means. And so it's really useful to not use descriptive words, but to use precise language wherever possible so that the executive can understand the material in their terms. Now, the same is true in terms of how it's going. Please don't sugarcoat it. Please don't try to make it sound better than it is. They want to know that you understand where things are, because someone that understands the reality of the situation can then fix it or can make it better. So accuracy is fundamental. And if there's ever a washout in initiative update, it's to try to frame how the executive thinks about what you're working on to make you and the initiative look good, as opposed to just help them assess what's going on.
Right. So very important to keep the right mindset as to you would want the executive to understand that you have understood the question, you have understood the case study, you have understood what needs to be talked about, and then it will give you an automatically a better preparation time to make sure you're setting the expectations right. And that's the right mindset to go with. You should not walk into a meeting or in an interview or in a presentation with a mindset that, oh, I don't know whether I have gotten this correct or not. You should go with the mindset you understand your thing, and then how you would want to further validate that. Correct. So having the right mindset before a communication is very, very critical, right? So now we'll go to a couple of sections here in this which talks about how would you pitch a new idea and how would you prepare for that. And that is very, very relevant for your entire course, because not only for the assignments here, but this will also help you to even when you're getting jobs or preparing for something, to understand how do you even pitch a new idea. A lot of you have made presentations here for the different case studies that has been given to you. After hearing this, go back and think of which are the areas you could have done differently, so that in the next set of presentations, etc., you are able to apply this, right? So it's very important, how you are pitching and preparing for it. So let's listen to this.
Let's move on to the second kind of meeting, which is pitching an idea. Now, as it turns out, some of the dynamics that we talked about in giving an initiative update and describing what something's worth and how it's going actually relate to also proposing a new idea, whether it be to an internal executive, to a customer, or to a partner. Ultimately, they want to understand, should I really invest my time in this idea? And do I think you have the credibility to get it done if we back it? Now, most people, when they're presenting an idea, they actually start at the wrong place. They start with the solution. They start with what they want to do. But all of the energy starts with agreeing on the problem. I like to think that it's often the people that understand the problems the most are the ones that earn the right to solve them. So we're going to learn how to build a balance between problem and solution. The other thing, and as we talked about earlier, is that Energy gets built when you understand a problem in its largest sense. What's the overall impact that could happen? But credibility gets built by making sure that the person understands enough about the details that you think they can get it done. It's not the case that executives just want high-level talk. They need to understand the balance of both what it's worth and whether you can get it done. And I think you've probably often seen people that present where they really nail one, they build a ton of energy, and then you leave the meeting and I'm not sure they actually know how to do that. Or the opposite, wow, they really know what they need to do, but I'm not sure it's worth doing. We're going to learn how to balance all of those things with a very simple framework. Before you go in to pitch an idea, I want you to make a very simple grid for yourself. Across the top, you have problem and you have solution. And then on the side, you have 50,000 feet and 1,000 foot. And what we need to do is to make sure we understand how to describe the problem and the solution at those two levels of detail to build the right energy and credibility.
Very, very critical to keep in mind. So a lot of times when we think of defining a problem and a solution, we think at a very high level. But what is the ground reality? Even in a lot of the, let's say, we'll take examples of what we have done in this class with different case studies, where we talked about how a technology will help transform the agricultural sector, or technology will help transform, let's say, for example, the sports, with the AI, etc., right? So a lot of the examples given were pretty much high at the 50,000 level, we should be doing this so that this happens. But think of it, the ground reality is in India. We are in India, and while we know that a lot of solutions can happen, but what is the ground reality? I think there was one example of a traffic light and a traffic management where we said that controlling that with an AI would be able to be helpful. But is India right now, while this is a solution for sure, technology solution, but is it practical to use that in a crowded city or a village where people don't probably have an idea of how the basics are? So whatever solutions we give, we not only have to think theoretically, that which is fine to start with, but also practically. And that's what it means by talking about 50,000 feet high and actual ground reality 1,000 feet, right? Problems and solutions. So very important to keep in mind that whatever solutions we are thinking of should be practical in nature.
Let's go back to our prior example. If I wanted to build energy around a problem space, I might say, we believe there is a $1 billion opportunity with small businesses that is limited by the fact that they rate our self-serve tools as poor relative to all competitors. It's a big problem. And you could feel the energy around the opportunity and what we are missing out on because we have these challenges. But I need to go to the next level. I need to get to 1,000 feet. I need to explain in this example that we've done our research, and as it turns out, some basic administrative capabilities aren't available in our product. And they are the capabilities our customers expect and rely on from all of our competitors. That our product's self-serve is only available in English, and some of our small businesses actually have employees that are spread all over the world and need to be able to access them in other languages. In fact, I talked to a customer just last week, and because of their frustration with some of our services, they decided to churn their account. And I know that this is happening across thousands of our customers in small business. At this point, we've created some energy around the problem in terms of the opportunity at stake. We've shown that we've done our homework, and we provided an example that really brings some credibility to the discussion. And now it's time to build energy with the executive that you have a solution. But we're going to start at 50,000 feet to again build that energy. You might say, we believe that we have an opportunity to create a chat experience using AI in languages around the world that can reduce 50% of customer dissatisfaction, which will translate into revenue growth with small businesses and reduce churn. Now we'll get to 1,000 feet. In this example, we've done some research and we found a partner that can help us deploy this solution around AI-enabled chat within 6 months to a pilot group of customers. And if successful, can be rolled out in 5 languages around the world over the course of the next 12 months. We believe this has an opportunity to reduce customer dissatisfaction and ultimately lead to greater retention and opportunities to upsell if we can create amazing experiences for our customers. I'll give another example from my experience As part of LinkedIn, I spend a lot of time speaking with heads of recruiting and talent at organizations all over the world. And so let me start with the problem. As we move into a hybrid world, the most important skill in your employees is the knowledge of how to get things done at your organization, the relationship capital that you've built. And as people leave, it becomes harder and harder for teams to get work done. Now at 1,000 feet. Let's talk about why people leave. We've done a bunch of research, and as it turns out, people often leave at the 3 or 4 year mark in their tenure in a role. And when you ask them why they leave, it's not because they want to, it's because they don't know how to find the next opportunity at the company or the organization that they love. Now let's talk about the solution. At the highest level, there are organizations that are rethinking how their recruiting teams are operating by focusing not just on external talent, but also on internal talent. Now at 1,000 feet, there are many companies that I speak with whereby as a result of focusing on external and internal talent, they produce more healthy pipelines, they give people stronger motivation and loyalty to the organization, and ultimately they can reduce attrition of their most successful and tenured employees by 50%. It's actually the single biggest thing that an organization can do to reduce attrition amongst top performers. It's a huge impact, and it means that the people at your organization with some of the greatest relationship capital can continue to help everyone be successful, particularly in a hybrid world. Now you've had a chance to share the problem and the solution at 50,000 feet and at 1,000 feet, and you have an opportunity to make a simple ask. I'd love your feedback on our initiative and understand whether we have support to proceed with the pilot over the next 6 months. What I think you'll realize is that we covered a lot of ground in under 2 minutes. If you're the executive, you understand the problem, you've built some energy around why it's important, you understand this person's done enough homework to understand what's causing the problem, because if we don't understand what's causing it, it's hard to know whether we'll really be able to fix it. And then
So I'll pause here. And then while you understood, and you heard that, how typically a problem should be defined and a solution should be kind of talked about at a larger level versus bringing it down to the ground level. And certain examples, what the author talks about is from a talent point of view. So a lot of times it happens that, when you join an organization, after a few years, you are thinking, what would you want to do next? Is that matching with your goal, or should I look for a new job altogether, right? And that's where I think a problem to be solved by the organization is how do you maintain that balance of getting in the right pipeline of people and also growing the internal folks who are in the system. There's always going to be that balance, right? So that's the example which he quotes. While it's a larger problem, then how do you actually break it down into the day-to-day kind of a thing? So the key takeaway here is when you're thinking of a problem and a solution at a big scale, while you are conceptualizing that, but break it down into small parts and then offer those ground reality solutions, which will eventually lead up to the larger problem solving. I think that's the important part of communication or a problem solving that we need to kind of have in mind, right? And which is very critical, right? So let's see, how would one prepare for it? I think preparation is very important for this entire meetings or presentations or anything for that matter. Let's see here, how would one prepare for this?
Before we wrap, I want to share some of the things that I do to prepare for a meeting. And one of the things that I've learned is that preparation makes a huge difference. Now, my experience with myself is that as I prepare, I go from complex to sounding more simple. I go from sounding unprepared to sounding relaxed. And it's not about standing in front of a mirror and looking yourself in the eye and trying to come across a certain way. It's getting comfortable with what you're trying to say. So whether you're giving an update on an initiative, what's the simplest way you can describe what it's worth and how's it going? If you're talking about an idea, what are the 1 or 2 sentences to describe the problem and the solution at 50,000 feet and at 1,000 feet? And if those sentences can feel natural to you, then it's going to come across as if you've done your homework and you've really thought through what you're saying. I also find that I go through a journey when I'm preparing for a meeting of this very simple process of sounding unprepared to sounding scripted to sounding relaxed and present. I find that when I'm unprepared, I'm spending so much time in my own head thinking about what I'm supposed to be saying that I'm not observing others. I'm not listening well. I'm not taking cues off of where the energy in the conversation is. And so for me, the ultimate goal is to feel prepared to the point where I'm not worried and thinking about what I'm going to say because I know what I think. And when you know what you think, it comes across clearly to the person that's listening. The second thing that I think about is how do I feel about what I'm talking about? And how do I want to communicate that to my audience? I could be energized. I could feel cautious. I could be concerned. I could be optimistic. Understanding how you're feeling about a topic is really important because it gives you the chance to be intentional about how to communicate that to the people that you're speaking with, including the executive. And so the most effective way to energize an audience or an executive is to energize yourself. If you want to be more convincing, be more convinced. Whether I'm going in front of a group of 10,000 or 10, to me, the last question I ask myself before I start talking is what do I feel on the inside and how do I want to make sure that I'm sharing that with the people I'm speaking with? The third piece of preparation is that every meeting needs a plan B. The executive shows up late. They show up with 5 minutes. You've prepared for 30. What are you going to do? Really seasoned communicators pre-think about what you're going to do if the time frame of the conversation changes to make the most use of the time you have, because you may not get it scheduled in the future. I've seen 5-minute meetings be incredibly productive when they were originally scheduled for 30, but the person that made that happen had done the thinking about how to prepare for that in advance. I actually have a story from my history as a consultant where it wasn't just that the time frame of the meeting changed, but the executive had no interest in talking about what I wanted to talk about, what the meeting was all about. I walked into the meeting, it was a new customer, and I wanted to make a great impression. I'd never worked with them in the past. And in my head, we were going to have a meeting about a proposal for the project and to get their feedback on it. Now, I sat down, had my presentation ready, and they said to me, before you get into it, I just have a question for you. Why is it that all of your colleagues are set out to make my life miserable? Now, at that point, what do? I mean, I clearly can't talk about what I'd prepared or what I thought the meeting was about. I had to put that aside and use the moment to understand how to create a relationship. What has happened? I'm really sorry. What can I do to put us in a better place? How can I help solve some of the challenges that you're clearly facing? And then once I've done that, maybe we can come back to have the conversation that we'd originally intended. So having a great plan B for your meeting is helpful, both in time frame and also if the executive decides to take the conversation in a different direction, and to be open to that. Because ultimately, the meeting is successful if the executive is successful. And if they have something that's important to them, then it's most critical to address that first before you get to whatever you think your needs were coming into the discussion.
All right, and I'll stop here. So you have heard, how one should be typically be prepared, while you are preparing for the meeting, while you're preparing for the presentation, but you should always be also ready to get or anticipate some questions, which is completely different. Maybe you walk into a meeting with a particular mindset and a particular preparation, but then you actually end up having some questions, which probably could be very different. So how do you handle that? So you handle that by actually speaking to the person at that point in time on that conversation, having a few rounds of interaction, and then coming back to your original content which you have prepared, right? So these are few things that's quite common in the industry. When you typically go to a meeting, you tend to get into situations which is not anticipatory. But then, if you get into something like that, then how do you handle it? It's on the spot, right? So I think these are few things overall to keep in mind in terms of your communication, in terms of your preparation, in terms of understanding how one should think of and start preparing. And we would love to see most of these actions from all of you when you are speaking more or when you are presenting more, etc. And I think that's the takeaway is what I would like to leave all of you with, so that you're able to understand how to apply this. I think the two things what we studied today, one was of course pretty much a topic which is relevant for the industry, that is generative AI and how one should do. Then the other was more about communication, right? Because in the end, whatever you learn or whatever you do, ultimately it all boils down to communication and how are you communicating, right? So these are the two different courses that we learned this thing. Any questions anybody has from this or whatever we have learned today? Anything? Any teams, any individuals, any questions or any doubts or any thoughts or experience, anything? Okay, if we don't have any questions or anything, I think we can conclude our class today. Harinakshi ma'am, are you there? Kionix Karnataka or Harinakshi ma'am, you are there?
Hello, sir.
Okay, Chandrakant from Kionix Hubli. Yes, tell me.
Sir, can you take a session on how to appear to interviews?
Yes, we did that in the last class. We
Uh,
had those mock sessions and
Okay.
we discussed that in the last class, and
Yes.
we shared examples of how the mock interviews are or how those things are. And today's class, and that's why we had this very specific topic around communication, because one needs to understand how to communicate, what to anticipate, etc. So today's this communication was a follow-up from the last class. But if you want, we can take more such classes on interviews and presentations.
So, like regarding the outfits and what all will be the questions asked, so all those kinds.
Yeah,
Common
see,
frequently
outfits and all those things in today's world is not a challenge at all. It is as normal as you would wear. But what kind of questions or what can you anticipate is something what we did last class. I'm not sure whether you were there, but then we did it in the last class. But we can do it again. We can do it again with more practice. But then we will also need the students to participate. So I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Harinakshi ma'am, are you there?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, so I think we can conclude our class today.
Okay.
I think Chandrakant is mentioning that we may want to have more sessions on interviews. I'm very happy to take that, right? I think maybe in the next class what we can do is not only for Hubli but for all the other franchises and students who are joining, we should do more of these role plays, right? So if you can please also communicate this to all the L2s and the franchisees. Even if you have at least some participation from each one of the centers, it would be helpful. I think everybody can benefit from each other, and we can take that even further.
Okay, sir. I'll inform them, sir.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.